Siemka, z tej strony Prasołd i witam was w kolejnym odcinku z gry pod tytułem The Witness. Jak sami pamiętacie, robiliśmy sobie tutaj miasto chyba, z tego co mi się kojarzy. Obszar tutaj właśnie na tej wyspie i ogólnie ominąłem tutaj jeden audiolog.
Oh my God, how does it happen in this poor old world? That thou art so great, and yet nobody finds thee. That thou callest so loudly, and nobody hears thee. That thou art so near, and nobody feels thee. That thou givest thyself to everybody, and nobody knows thy name. Men flee from thee, and say they cannot find thee. They turn their backs and say they cannot see thee. They stop their ears and say they cannot hear thee. Hans Dank, circa 1520.
Ogólnie tutaj właśnie dalej mamy zamknięte, ale no oczywiście musiałem się posłużyć poradnikiem, żeby się dowiedzieć, że w taki sposób uruchamiamy sobie te schody. Nie wiem, dlaczego jest akurat taka kombinacja. Nikt się chyba tego nie dowie, tak mi się wydaje. No ale co poradzimy, nie? Gra zawsze będzie wiedziała najlepiej. Nie, tutaj tak, tu będzie. Nie, to trzeba trochę uciąć. No i podliczmy to. No, dobra, to ma sens jednak. Oż cholera. O! To miało sens. Okej. Nie, to już trzeba troszeczkę inaczej. No. Teraz to ma sens. Bo to musimy jeszcze wziąć tak. To musimy wziąć tak. No, to ma sens. No i teraz dance ma sens, co? No. I to były proste zagadki. Bez potrzeby sprawdzania poradnika. O, proszę, ale tu skitrali taką planszę. To by było za prosto, zapomniałem. Trzeba naokoło, jak zwykle, zapieprzać. Nie wiem w ogóle, po co nam te plansze są. Te takie poukrywane. No ale jak już je widzimy, to je chociaż zróbmy, nie? No. Kurde, czy ja to mogę w sumie skończyć już w tamtym odcinku, tak szczerze mówiąc. Town. Zdobyto trofeum. No ale czekajcie, może żeby nie było nudno, to właśnie wam pokażę ten laser. I ja ogólnie wrócę się jeszcze do tego wiatraka, który tam był. No ale może już będziemy powoli schodzić. Czy może nie będzie takiej potrzeby? Dobra. Fajnie. Tylko chyba dalej nam się tam nic nie odblokowało. Nie widziałem bynajmniej z daleka. Że dopiero jak podejdziemy, to się tam coś stanie, ale no na razie nie chcę tam iść. Chcę iść do tego wiatraka. Okej. Dobra, nie wiem, czy ja chcę tam schodzić. Dobra, chodźmy na dół. Sprawdźmy w ogóle, czy tam w ogóle się ruszyły jakieś drzwi, czy coś. Nie. To było wcześniej. Okej. Wow. Nic mi to nie dało. O! O, poszło od razu. Nie pytajcie. Naprawdę nie pytajcie. What? Ej, ja tu byłem w tamtym odcinku. What? I tu było zamknięte. Mhm. Okej.
Well, that's no better a solution than any of the others, is it? So, in the end, have we learned anything? from this look at why the world turned out the way it did that's of any use to us in our future. Something, I think, that the key to why things change is the key to everything. How easy is it for knowledge to spread? And that in the past, the people who made change happen were the people who had that knowledge, whether they were craftsmen or kings. Today, the people who make things change, the people who have that knowledge, are the scientists and the technologists who are the true driving force of humanity. And before you say, what about the Beethovens and the Michelangelos? Let me suggest something with which you may disagree violently. That at best, the products of human emotion, art, philosophy, politics, music, literature, are interpretations of the world that tell you more about the guy who's talking than about the world he's talking about. Second-hand views of the world, made third-hand by your interpretation of them. Things like that, as opposed to this. Know what it is? It's a bunch of amino acids, the stuff that goes to build up a worm or a geranium or you. This stuff's easier to take, isn't it? Understandable, got people in it. This scientific knowledge is hard to take because it removes the reassuring crutches of opinion, ideology, and leaves only what is demonstrably true about the world.
No to akurat racja.
And the reason why so many people may be thinking about throwing away those crutches is because, thanks to science and technology, they have begun to know that they don't know so much, and that if they are to have more say in what happens to their lives, more freedom to develop their abilities to the full, they have to be helped towards that knowledge that they know exists and that they don't possess. And by help towards that knowledge, I don't mean give everybody a computer and say, help yourself. Where would you even start? No, I mean trying to find ways to translate the knowledge, to teach us to ask the right questions. See, we're on the edge of a revolution in communications technology that is going to make that more possible than ever before. Or, if that's not done, to cause an explosion of knowledge that will leave those of us who don't have access to it as powerless as if we were deaf, dumb, and blind. And I don't think most people want that. So what do we do about it? I don't know. But maybe a good start would be to recognize within yourself the ability to understand anything, because that ability is there, as long as it's explained clearly enough. And then go and ask for explanations. And if you're thinking right now, what do I ask for? Ask yourself if there's anything in your life that you want changed. That's where to start.
The BBC wishes to thank NASA. Okay.
Well, that's no better a solution than any of the others, is it? So, in the end,
Czy ja sobie otworzyłem ten filmik w sumie?
from this look at why the world turned out the way it did, that's of any use to us in our future. Something, I think, that...
And so, by a backhanded, upside-down argument, was predicted that there is in carbon a level at 7.82 million volts, and then experiments in the laboratory with carbon show indeed that there is. And therefore, the existence in the world of all these other elements is very closely related to the fact that there is this particular level in carbon.
Szczerze mówiąc,
But
nie
the
chce mi się
position
tego
of this
słuchać.
particular level in carbon seems to us, after knowing the physical laws, to be a very complicated accident of 12 complicated particles interacting. So I wish to illustrate by this example
that an understanding of the physical laws doesn't give you an understanding in a sense of understanding the significance of the world in any way. The details of real experience are very far often from the fundamental laws. There are, in a way of speaking in the world, we have a way of discussing the world which you could call
Okej, tutaj nie wiem, o co chodzi w tych filmikach. Ta gra w ogóle nie ma sensu, nie ma żadnego tła fabularnego. No, czy ja jakiś wzór pominąłem, czy coś? Typ sobie siedzi.
Know your
Profesor Moriarty. Sekret Psalmu 46. Dalej mnie to nie interesuje. Ja chcę po prostu odblokować wszystkie zagadki.
How many of you here have personally witnessed?
So it's absolutely simple. What I have to
Że
say
to
to
scenie
you.
sobie zostawię.
It's what my teacher said to me. And I'm still deeply discovering the reverberation of that. And it's simply stop looking for what you want. Not cynically stop looking for what you want. Because there's a way of stopping looking for what you want in resignation and cynicism and closing down. But innocently, openly, stop looking for what you want in this moment. Not tomorrow when you have it. But in this moment, to take one moment, whatever it is you want, however mundane or profound, and just stop looking for it. And you will find more than what you could ever want. Because more than what can be wanted is already who you are. It's too simple to be grasped, but absolutely, completely realizable. If, and it is a huge if, of course, you are willing to give up your hope that what you want will be found in the next thought, or the next activity, or the next day, or the next man, or the next woman, or the next teaching, or the next experience. So that's huge. That's the challenge. And I've blessedly traveled to Australia to challenge you in that direction, that directionless direction. It's so simple that it has to be said over and over, because it just slips right by the mind. And if it's said over and over and in enough ways and then not said, it can just be revealed. Not as something new, but as something absolutely fresh. Not new, but fresh. Who you are is not new, but it is always fresh. Who you think you are is old and dead. We just keep trying to think it a little better, squeeze some.
A to kiedyś się
life.
skończy. Nie, to dopiero połowa jest. Babo, nikogo to nie obchodzi, tak szczerze mówiąc. Przepraszam, że was tym zamęczyłem. Ale trzeba czymś zapchać odcinek, nie? Hech. Dobra, wiecie co? Pójdziemy już może sobie... na tą górę. Mhm. Nie tutaj. Przechodziłem tędy? Kiedykolwiek? Dobra. Kolejny jakiś bezużyteczny panel, żeśmy przyciągnęli, spoko. Możemy iść dalej, nie? Ej, co jest? Czemu przez chwilę miałem wszystko takie, nie wiem... szare? I później mi się to z powrotem tak pokolorowało. No teraz też. Czekajcie. Sprawdzam jeszcze, czy może tu jakichś audiologów nie ma. Że tu... O, proszę, proszę, proszę.
The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of true art and true science. Whoever does not know it and can no longer wonder, no longer marvel, is as good as dead and his eyes are dimmed. It was the experience of mystery, even if mixed with fear, that engendered religion. A knowledge of the existence of something we cannot penetrate, our perceptions of the profoundest reason and the most radiant beauty, which only in their most primitive forms are accessible to our minds. It is this knowledge and this emotion that constitute true religiosity. In this sense, and in this alone, I am a deeply religious man. I cannot conceive of a God who rewards and punishes his creatures, or has a will of the kind that we experience in ourselves. Neither can I, nor would I, want to conceive of an individual that survives his physical death. Let feeble souls, from fear or absurd egoism, cherish such thoughts. I am satisfied with the mystery of the eternity of life, and with the awareness and a glimpse of the marvelous structure of the existing world, together with the devoted striving to comprehend a portion, be it ever so tiny, of the reason that manifests itself in nature. Albert Einstein, 1931.
Kurde, ciekawe. Ciekawe, co tu będzie w tej świątyni, czy tam w świątyni, kurwa, no, na tej górze, tutaj. Ale nie wiem. Nie wiem, czy to powinno mi się otworzyć od razu, czy może nie. Aha, mogę tu poprowadzić. Ale dobra, słuchajcie. To by było... O, to jest kolejny audiolog.
Up
Dobra,
there,
wysłuchamy sobie tego audiologu.
you go around every hour and a half, time after time after time. You wake up usually in the mornings, and just the way that the track of your orbits go, you wake up over the Mideast, over North Africa. As you eat breakfast, you look out the window as you're going past, and there's the Mediterranean area, and Greece, and Rome, and North Africa, and the Sinai, the whole area. And you realize that in one glance, that what you're seeing is what was the whole history of man for years, the cradle of civilization. And you go around down across North Africa and out over the Indian Ocean and look up at that great subcontinent of India pointed down toward you as you go past it. And Ceylon off to the side, Burma, Southeast Asia, out over the Philippines, and up across that monstrous Pacific Ocean. Vast body of water. You've never realized how big that is before. And you finally come up across the coast of California and look for those friendly things. Los Angeles and Phoenix, and on across El Paso. And there's Houston. There's home. And you look, and sure enough, there's the Astrodome. And you identify with that, you know? It's an attachment. And down across New Orleans, and then looking down to the south, and there's the whole peninsula of Florida laid out. And all the hundreds of hours you spent flying across that route, down in the atmosphere, all that is friendly again. And you go out across the Atlantic Ocean and back across Africa. And you do it again, and again, and again. And that identity, that you identify with Houston, and then you identify with Los Angeles, and Phoenix, and New Orleans, and everything. And the next thing you recognize in yourself is you're identifying with North Africa. You look forward to that. You anticipate it. And there it is. That whole process begins to shift of what it is you identify with. When you go around it in an hour and a half, you begin to recognize that your identity is with that whole thing, and that makes a change.
Ale
You look down
skończysz
there,
gadać.
and you can't imagine how many borders and boundaries you crossed again and again and again, and you don't even see them. At that
Wiecie
wake
co, ja
up
się
scene,
rozejrzę.
the Mideast, you know there are hundreds of people killing each other over some imaginary line that you can't see. From where you see it,
Myślałem, że mogę
the
potem
thing
wyjść.
is a whole, and it's so beautiful.
O!
And you wish you could take one from each side in hand and say, look at it from this perspective. Look at that. What's important? And so a little later
Niby
on,
to
your
jest
friend,
góra i w
again those
ogóle nie
same
powinienem tego
neighbors,
zaczynać.
another astronaut, the person next to you goes out to the moon. And now he looks back and sees the Earth not as something big where he can see the beautiful details, but he sees the Earth as a small thing out there. And now that contrast between that bright blue and white Christmas tree ornament and that black sky, that infinite universe, really comes through. The size of it, the significance of it, it becomes both things. It becomes so small and so fragile and such a precious little spot in that universe that you can block it out with your thumb. And you realize that on that small spot, that little blue and white thing is everything that means anything to you. All of history and music and poetry and art and war and death and birth and love, tears, joy, games, all of it is on that little spot out there that you can cover with your thumb. And you realize that that perspective, that you've changed, that there's something new there. That relationship is no longer what it was. And then you look back on the time when you were outside on that EVA and those few moments that you had the time because the camera malfunctioned, that you had the time to think about what was happening. And you recall staring out there at the spectacle that went before your eyes. Because now, you're no longer inside something with a window looking out at a picture. But now you're out there, and what you've got around your head is a goldfish bowl, and there are no limits here. There are no frames. There are no boundaries. You're really out there, over it, floating, going 25,000 miles per hour, ripping through space, a vacuum, and there's not a sound. There's a silence, the depth of which you've never experienced before. And that silence contrasts so markedly with the scenery and the speed with which you know you're going. That
Boże, ja
contrast,
przepraszam, że
the
musicie
mix of
tego
those two
słuchać.
things, really comes through.
Czemu to jest takie długie?
And you think about what you're experiencing and why. Do you deserve this? This fantastic experience? Have you earned this in some way? Are you separated out to be touched by God to have some special experience here that other men cannot have? You know the answer to that is no. There's nothing that you've done that deserves that earned that. It's not a special thing for you.
Już
You
wiem,
know
jak nazwa
very well
odcinek.
at that
Słuchanie
moment,
zjebanych audiologów,
and it comes through to
których
you
w ogóle nie
so
można
powerfully
zrozumieć.
that you're
O,
the sensing
idealnie, nie?
element for man. You look down and see the surface of that globe that you've lived on all this time, and you know all those people down there. They are like you. They are you. And somehow you represent them when you are up there. A sensing element, that point out on the end, and that's a humbling feeling. It's a feeling that says you have a responsibility. It's not for yourself. The eye that doesn't see does not do justice to the body. That's why it's there. That's why you're out there. And somehow you recognize that you're a piece of this total life. You're out on that forefront and you have to bring that back somehow. And that becomes a rather special responsibility. It tells you something about your relationship with this thing we call life. And when you come back, there's a difference in that world now. There's a difference in that relationship between you and that planet, and you and all those other forms of life on that planet, because you've had that kind of experience. It's a difference, and it's so precious. And all through this, I've used the word you because it's not me. It's not Dave Scott. It's not Dick Gordon, Pete Conrad, John Glenn. It's you. It's us. It's we. It's life. It's had that experience. And it's not just my problem to integrate. It's not my challenge to integrate, my joy to integrate. It's yours. It's everybody's. Russell Schweikart, 1975.
Niemożliwe, skończyłaś gadać. Wow. Niemożliwe. Ja ci poklaskam normalnie. Brawo. Brawo. Dobra, słuchajcie, w następnym odcinku już chyba będziemy sobie robić ostatnią miejscówkę, czyli właśnie górę Mountain. Tak więc mam nadzieję, że odcinek wam się spodobał. Zapraszam do lajkowania, komentowania oraz subskrybowania. Na razie i cześć, do zobaczenia w następnym odcinku z gry pod tytułem The Witness.